Okay, so here's what the top stitching looks like. I'm just going to be stitching the lining onto the other side of my lining selvage here. So you don't want to sew both of these selvages in, you just want to grab one on the lining side. And I'm going to take that all the way down here. I am going to leave open 2 spots here where I have my straps, where my straps are going to go. I'm going to not do that understitch yet. I'm going to leave that for last because I want to do my fitting and then make it pretty. So I'm going to just go ahead and finish up this seam, leaving open the other section for the second strap. And usually when you do this, you would stitch on the top of the lining. I am going to stitch mine on the inside just so that I can make sure that this seam is staying open. That's how I prefer to do it, but if you want to do everything strictly by the book the way it's supposed to be done, you should do it this way. So I line up my fabric so that the seam is right on the left farther side of where the needle opening is, so I would do that here, and then I stitch right next to that, so not directly on top of the seam you've already done, but close to it. And be careful when you're sewing that you don't grab your strap for your dress. So that needs to be out of the way so you don't sew on top of that. Always checking to make sure that your fabric is open, that your seams are open correctly, and that you're not grabbing anything you shouldn't. Don't worry too much if you accidentally sew through a piece of boning somewhere. I do that all the time and it has yet to hurt my machine, knock on wood. You should be alright if you sew through one of them just a little bit. See that? That's my boning. That's okay, I'm still going to keep going, just sew right through that. No big problem. Now this is where my other strap, my shoulder strap, is going to go, so I'm going to stitch to right before that section, and then I'll back stitch there. That's the boning. Okay, gonna back stitch a little bit, and then I'm going to lift up the needle, move all of my piece out of the way, and then start on the other side of where that shoulder strap would be. So right here. Back stitch. Just feel every now and then underneath. Make sure you're not grabbing anything you shouldn't be. I know I keep saying that in every section of this video, but it really is important. Just checking to make sure my other strap isn't caught anywhere it's not supposed to be. Nope, we're fine. Don't worry if you need to do this slowly. Better safe than sorry. Okay, I can see now I'm coming up on my second strap, so I'm going to just do a little back stitch there, lift up, move on, and then I'll start on the other side of where that strap would be. Okay, and then this is the part that I already did earlier, so I'm just going to sew a little bit over what I had already done. And then I'll do a little back stitch on top of that previous stitch I already made. Lift my needle up, pull the fabric out, trim the ends. Okay, now before you move on to anything else, go ahead and flip that out. Just make sure you don't have any kind of weirdness that's not supposed to be there. Just checking for any weird blotches or gathers. Okay, that side looks good. This side looks good. And this side looks good. Making sure both of my straps are out where they're supposed to be. Perfect. So, the next part will be to go through here and trim out the excess fabric. So, this is that seam I just understitched. I am going to trim both of these to about half of their thickness, and just be really careful that you don't grab that part that you just stitched down. So don't grab any of your lining and cut it by accident, because people do it all the time. So I am going to start trimming this out. Come back here after you finish trimming yours. Okay, so this that you see here is everything that I just trimmed out. You'll want to actually flip your fabric the way that you're going to wear it. So I have my lining now against the right side of my fabric here, the way that I would be wearing it. And you just want to look at it and see if there's anything that looks odd, or if there's anything that's not laying well. I can see in the front, the very front here on my V, that there's just a little bit of bunching. And then also, I found over here on the side of my dress, I can see that there's a little bit of fabric. It looks like maybe there's a little bit too much fabric fitted in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that spot that I want to trim from the inside, and then I also know that I want to touch the middle front, and I'm going to flip out my fabric, and around that section where it's bunching, I'm going to trim it just a little bit more. And just be really careful when you're doing this, because if you need to do extra trimming, then more than likely you're probably getting pretty close to the seam. So just be very careful. I'm going to trim that out some more and trim this out. I'm doing the lining and the right side of the fabric separately just because I want to be careful. Trim work is where a lot of people will get slightly careless and they'll accidentally cut a big hole in their dress. Ask me how I know this. Okay. Let's trim that out a little. If you are too scared to cut really closely, the other thing that you can do is actually take your scissors and you can just cut just a little bit into the seam, like so. Just be careful, always being very careful. Okay, let's see. I think this could be trimmed out a little bit more. Okay, and then I also had the front center that I wanted to trim just a little bit more as well. Get in here and find that. Okay, it's my front center. Getting quite a bit close to the seam line there. That's part of the reason that we did all of that back stitching that I mentioned earlier. I also went through and grabbed any loose strings that I had like this and I just trimmed them to make the inside of my garment nicer. Oh, there's one too. Okay, then flip it back how it was and check it again. Now my front here looks a little bit better. There's still just there's a slight little bunching in there, but I know that once I press this with the hot iron, it will go out, whereas before the amount that I had in there, I don't think it would have. So now it will. And then if I check on the other side, it still looks like there's a slight bunching. So once I press it, it will be like this, but I can still see just a tiny bit through here, so I am going to trim that down some more. So just check the rest of your garment for anything like that. Make little necessary trims as you need. Be very careful that you do not cut into your fabric, and then come back here and join me again.